Hello? Did it let people in?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Sorry, we were up and running. We were doing very well. And then I had previously said I was worried that we had two different links, and my very capable operations manager started a new link. And so she logged in on my account and started a new one, which wasn't what we needed. Okay, so I am admitting people right now. And I've got 20 more that want to be admitted. So as soon as we get everybody back in.
You're just so popular, Colleen.
I was really glad. I was saying some choice words. And then, well, when this happened, and then I worried, oh my gosh, is it still running and they can all hear me?
Yes, we recorded it all, Colleen.
Anybody else get derailed here?
Yeah.
I think everybody did.
Oh, okay.
Right in the middle of our conversation. I hope it wasn't something I said.
No, not at all. It was just bad timing. I was saying to my son and husband who are here, you know, blah, 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 not happy that everything was knocked off. And then I was trying to get it restarted. And my son said, are you sure you're not on? And everybody can hear this.
Live mic.
I'm not. So, yes, technology. I love Zoom typically, as long as we'll send out a new link for the next weeks ahead. And so it won't be this same link, but it'll be something that you can schedule on your calendar if you would like. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We have Rian Mullane, who is with us, and like most people say, the Ryans of Blackball. So I am going to hand it over to one of you, if you would like, and to introduce yourselves and kind of a little bit of history of Blackball, and we will go from there.
I guess I'll start. This is Rian Mullane. I have with me Ryan Burrows and I believe Rian Anderson. I'm both on the line, although I think there were some technical hiccups there for Rian Anderson, so I know he's working on it. Ryan Burrows is with us. He's our company president. Rian Anderson and I are both vice president here in Port Angeles. All three of us are part owners of the company. I guess I'll just start off with the current overview. Blackball, as you know, has not been operating since March 29th. We operated then basically in just repatriation mode, bringing Canadians home, but after that, we suspended service because of the border closure to leisure tourism. Since then, we've been working on trying to find various legislative solutions. I also have Tim, who is working with us on some of those. On the line, he's on the phone. We're essentially out of service until we believe there's a vaccine or the Canadian border opens, which it doesn't look like is going to occur at least this year. At least that's what we're hearing. So for those of you who aren't familiar, there's the federal decision which is across all of Canada, and then there's also the BC decision, which is provincial, and like our governments here, the states have control over the health, and similarly the provinces do as well, and they currently have a 14-day quarantine. And of course, this isn't affecting just us. You guys have probably seen some of the stories about Point Roberts being cut off from the entire US, and other places that are very linked to Canada being cut off from that regular flow across the border. So we're anticipating sometime next year being able to reopen. At this point, we don't have a day. We don't have a date. We're taking it month by month, of course. If something changes, we can take a look at that. I would add that we have had tremendous support from all of our local leaders, from the port, the city, the county, our congressional delegation. We've had several calls with Representative Kilmer's office. We've talked extensively with the two senators' offices. And there are a lot of people helping to look for solutions. We did get a PPP loan, like many did in the community, and thanks to Colleen, you know, for really pushing those and getting people to, you know, to receive them. Beyond that, we're looking for a way to restart without losing enormous amounts of money, basically, and return service to this community. So. With that, I guess, Colleen, maybe I'll hand it back to you, and there may be more questions people have.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Well, the other Ryans, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, Ryan Burrows here from Victoria. Again, yeah, I follow along with Ryan. I thought he summarized it well. Yeah, we're obviously
For 1,000 finance, regardless of down.
we're obviously concerned about the future, the unknown. We have some cash, of course, but it's the future, and when we come back in, keeping our people and keeping this route. So that's our focus. We have confidence it'll happen, but it isn't for sure. So that's really our biggest concern. We have also had lots of support over here. Our landlord, the Ministry of Transportation, has been very good to us. So we want to get back to service as soon as we can to get our people working. But really, it's in the hands of the governments and opening the border and getting that 14-day quarantine off, because otherwise, no essential travel. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rian Anderson here in Port Angeles. I don't have anything to add, but you know, thank you everybody for being on this call. It's great.
Terrific. And Ryan, was Tim Thompson able to join us?
I believe he's on the line. He did text me and say he was. Tim, are you there?
I am on the line.
Do you think you might be able to offer a little summary for us of some of the efforts made to date?
Sure. Call's probably pretty timely. We are looking at a series of potential federal options. Excuse me for a minute. One is to the congressional delegation is going to be sending a letter to the Department of Treasury and urging for a separate lending facility to be established for private companies who meet the public purpose doctrine, as well as provide an essential public service. That classifies a number of employers and a number of businesses that have been kind of not nicely fitting into the kind of long-term ability to get and secure capital. The second part is we are actively working with the Federal Department of Transportation on language that would acknowledge and actually establish grants, which are going to be essential for Blackball's long-term operational ability. And those are infusions of capital, and they would not be loans that need to be paid back, but actual capital that would sustain them, particularly around the seasonal issues that Blackball faces. As you all know, they are profitable during the times that they can operate during the height of their season. Yeah.
Hold on here. I'm trying to mute whoever it is that, and sorry about that. And we lost Tim there.
Darn it.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the
Sorry about that.
part of the, no problem. Part of it is we're working with the Federal Department of Transportation, and that would be along the lines with our delegation to offer some relief. There's legislation that affects the cruise lines that we have suggested language to. That's a piece of legislation that Senator Sullivan from Alaska and Senator Murray are collaborating on. And the most timely one that we need assistance, we're going to be, we haven't even had a chance to fully brief the Ryans on this yet, but late last night, we were informed and spent some time with Senator Cantwell's office and Congressman Kilmer's office. The National Defense Authorization Act is moving its way through the negotiation process between the House and the Senate. What is significant about that is the Maritime Relief Act in the House was adopted. This is legislation that Congressman DeFazio, Chairman DeFazio, has submitted, and we are being urged to mobilize contacts that would go to our two senators, which would be Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell, along with some other targets that we are reaching out to urge that they adopt the House version of this with some language. And what's significant about that is it's the first time that a piece of legislation actually fits the Blackball story. It isn't perfect by any means. I haven't seen the final language, but we're going to be getting it today. And Ryan, this is the moment in which we will begin to reach out to our local stakeholders and urge direct communications and some conference calls we'll be setting up with our delegation. And again, that legislation allows for operating dollars, which I want to say for the third time is essential to the long-term viability of Blackball. And it also establishes provisions that establishes the emergency provisions, and it meets the public purpose doctrine that is very important in order for private entities to be able to receive the kind of funding. Last but not least, we are working actively with Congressman Kilmer, who's on the lead, to be looking for language. If the Congress does pass COVID Relief Act legislation sometime in September, we're urging that under the Community Development Block Grant, that language we have submitted to our delegation would be, adopted. We're coordinating that very closely with Commerce on both the State Department of Commerce on their grant capability, as well as establishing with the governor that we would be very aggressive about pursuing CDBG funding as also another source of funds. All of you know,
this is a Zoom.
Sorry about that. Keep on going there. I got him muted.
Stop doing that, people.
Did we lose Tim again?
It's like whack-a-mole, Colleen.
Yeah. So everyone, if you can remember to mute your microphone, that would be very helpful. And then when you want to speak, unmute before that, please. But I think we lost Tim again. Well, since we did momentarily lose Tim, I will share with you.
I'm back, I think.
Great.
I'll conclude on, that's a note to conclude my comments. But we're working actively with the state, and we're seeking the flexibility under the CDBG grant program. That is not a ideal vehicle, but we think with the language, it will help at least allow a more direct capacity that could be granted to Blackball with the legislative suggestions we've made. And I'll conclude on that, and thank you for the opportunity to give you an update. And we'll be circling back with all our local partners on a communication strategy with our delegation. I think this is a good step in the right direction with the National Defense Authorization Act moving.
Great, thank you, Tim. I wanted to share before people had to jump off at 8:30 that thanks to Josh Weiss, who just provided this information to us, our NOLA lobbyist, that the governor has announced the allocations from the coronavirus relief funds. Clallam County will be receiving, of the 126 million that is going directly to counties, 1.52 million. Forks will receive 54,525. Port Angeles, 294,300, and Squim, 115,425. So there wasn't, Josh, do you know if that allocation included the funds that were the 62 million for public health, or is that in addition to this funding?
Good morning, everyone. The 62 million for public health is in addition to this amount. It's going out to the public health jurisdictions directly. And for the, I haven't looked closely for any of the local government representatives on the call. Importantly, I know for you, they also will be allowing you till November 30th to spend these dollars, and that November 30th date is for the whole amount that you've received, not just for the new dollars. And I know that's been a really important point for the cities and counties, being able to get a little bit of extra time just to have this money allocated or committed. So yeah, good news this morning.
Thank you. So that's some flexibility that I know Commissioner Johnson from the county had said his intent is to spend some of that to support Blackball operations. But of course, that is a 3-person decision and there are lots of competing needs. So, you know, we'll see what can be done with that as a resource. Also, I see Ron Allen from the Jamestown Tribe has joined us. Ron, thank you. And I know Blackball is very important to you as well as to the tribe. Is there something you want to share with everyone here this morning?
Well, thanks, Colleen. You can hear me all right?
Yes.
I was just getting ready to write a chat for Tim. Be good to get from Tim the list of options that he and the senators and Derek are exploring. I was aware of the CARES 2.0 option that may be out there as well. But, and I haven't circled back to Ryan Mullane's email to me on the challenge and the problem with regard to getting it up and running. So it'd be helpful, Ryan, if we have a summary of what the challenge is. We know about the COVID-19 problems, okay? So that's pretty straightforward. But what else are they looking at? And this is to your Canadian counterpart on the facility. So is part of the problem also the immigration and or the homeland security issues? I saw an email a while back about facility upgrades that are needed on either one side or the other side of the border or both. And so I'm not quite clear about that. I saw numbers that were fairly sizable numbers, Ryan. So I don't know if that's part of the solution as well. So to me, that also begs the question of whether or not if that's part of the problem. It's a big number, and that's not going to come through. I doubt that we will get that through CARES, and feedback from Tim would be helpful on that matter. But on infrastructure, there will be an infrastructure bill somewhere in the near future, and maybe that's part of the solution as well. So anyhow, those are some of my thoughts. Yes, without a doubt, the Blackball traffic and market for us is a huge deal for our tribe.
Thank you, Ron.
If I could just, Colleen, comment briefly on that.
Thank you, please.
Ron, as usual, you've summarized it right. I would say that the strategy going forward is probably maybe 4 pots of money. One of them is on the financial side to deal with the whole, just in terms of credit. The other one is the kind of PPP Main Street lending pieces that kind of fit into that. The other one is kind of looking at an array of options that produce capital. I couldn't agree with you more that eventually, as we move, I'm still very hopeful that in January, February, we'll see a major infrastructure package emerge. And we've got to be ready in all arenas, because I don't think there's any one silver bullet that's going to take up the capital needs of Blackball. The main thing that the Ryans have instilled in me is we need to survive. And so we're going to have to do this incrementally. And I think you rightly point out that long-term solutions, both on the infrastructure side that could help Blackball from an operational standpoint, we would be looking for some relief in a future infrastructure package. And the interim strategy is to hit singles and doubles, because we're in baseball season along those lines. And I'll conclude on, it's good to hear your voice, and I appreciate all your help and support.
Thanks, Tim. And I see Nathan West on the line too. So part of this is relative to the city. A lot of things are going on down in the waterfront. And so Blackball is one issue. Immigration, Homeland Security is another. But what the city is planning as well with regard to that whole waterfront area. So I do not know and have an interest in what PA is hoping to do to accommodate that market traffic pattern.
So Colleen, I'd love to jump in if I can, because I'm going to have to drop off here real soon. Thanks, Ron. No, I really think you're absolutely correct there. The connectivity that we see Blackball provide and the nexus that it has to every single one of the developments that we're seeing in downtown, it really builds to ensure the success of each of those future developments. And I think everyone is watching and hoping that we see the border reopen. And it's important that that happens soon. In the meantime, we want to do everything that we can to continue to help Blackball. So absolutely, letter writing will continue. I know we have done some letters in the past, and we can continue to do that. We have some small assistance through our utility relief program, but that's not going to be meaningful. We really need some big numbers here, particularly some assistance from the state and federal government. And I'm really happy to hear from Tim that we have some additional paths that we can explore this morning to help them out. But if you think about it, the ripple effect of Blackball not operating right now is huge. And really it impacts a number of our smaller businesses that really depended all the way down to some of the food provided on the ferry that crossed every day. That impacts our local businesses, and just a huge ripple effect of not the lack of operating right now is really painful for so many businesses in our community. So the city's committed to doing everything we can to help. We're really happy to hear that 2.0 of the CARES Act is on its way. Although I will say those dollar amounts are pretty meaningless in the big picture when it comes to actually spreading things out. I'm really appreciative of the county's cooperative effort on the CARES Act, knowing that as soon as that funding comes in, the money that you see coming to each of the area cities and the county, we're going to take a cooperative approach to make sure that that goes in the right direction, but that we also see some of that funding go in the direction of the EDC to make sure that we continue to help all of those businesses as well as Blackball. But we're here thinking about solutions and committed to making sure that Blackball receives assistance during this really difficult time.
Thank you, Nathan. So I just admitted Randy Johnson to the call, and Randy, welcome. And just wanted to share with you that before, just a few minutes ago, I shared with the group that the fresh off the governor's communication site, they announced that Clallam County would receive $1.52 million, Forks $54,000, Port Angeles, 294,300, and Squim, 115,425. And so, Randy, if you want to share a few things, we've had Tim Thompson speak and Ron Allen. They've also the Ryan's owners of Blackball have kind of shared the situation that I know you're quite familiar with. But also, after you're done, I'd like John Nutter to talk about the port's position and what the port is looking at doing. We're kind of in a, wanting to have a complete package, so we haven't, of solutions, and the port wants to be part of that. And that being said, I'd like to pass it off to Randy and then John Nutter. Randy? Maybe Randy's not with us after all. I know I did admit him. So John?
Good morning, everyone. Well, I think it's safe to say that the port is as committed to this issue as anybody else is on the North Olympic Peninsula, or it's clear across the peninsula. We see Blackball as one of our most treasured tenants. For those of you that don't know, they actually lease the terminal down there on the waterway from the port. And when we look at the impact that all of our various tenants have, they have by far the largest impact. So we're looking for any way we can. We don't have an endless piggy bank, so we can't just hand out tons and tons of cash because we simply don't have it. As a local government, we've received one payment so far in terms of CARES funding, and that was $69,000 out at our airport, and that's all we've received in terms of assistance. So our ability to make meaningful help is pretty limited, but we are absolutely committed to whether it is using part of that money for them or rent relief, whether it's deferrals or forgiving some of the rent down on the waterfront. We're going to find some way to help. Nathan and I and Karen Goshen, our executive director, we have a meeting scheduled with the city next week to try and talk through some of the details in terms of rent relief and utility relief. So we'll partner with anyone we can find to find a way to make this happen.
Thanks, John. And
this is Karen Goshen.
Oh, good. Sorry, Karen.
I'd like to
put you in there, please.
Yeah. One thing that I'll add is I know the port has had conversations with the Ryans regarding infrastructure improvements, whether it's post-creek clearance or just that the East Dock needs some rebuilding and repair on it. And so the port will be partnering with a Blackball to see what we can do to seek funding for some of those improvements.
Thank you, Karen. So currently the Port Commission has approved deferring the rent payments, which are about $7,000 per month that Blackball pays the port. And however, the Commission has the authority to completely waive them. And so we are trying to understand what the state could do, what the federal government can do, the county, the city, and we want to be part of a package solution. Here's Randy Johnson trying to get back in again. So, we certainly are willing to provide, I can't speak on behalf of the other two commissioners, but I am willing to vote to-
You lost the thread there. Can you phrase it another way?
Uh-oh. Today, we've had more technical problems, I think, than we've had for all other 18 or so coffees. But Randy Johnson, can you hear us?
I can. I'm sorry. I had problems getting in today. I had to go to my wife's computer and at least I got the password and now we're back in.
Great.
County doesn't like to interface all the time, at least my county computer. So sorry about that.
So Randy, I shared with everyone that we were notified this morning that the county has received 1.52 million from the second round of the coronavirus relief funds, which is part of that 2.95 billion that the state received out of the 150 billion that went to all the states. So the county received 1.52 million. Previously the county had received 4.18 million. Forks received 54,000. Port Angeles will receive 294,000 and Sequim 115,000. So, you know, some good news that there's a second round of the coronavirus relief funds that are coming out. It certainly does not equal 45% of the 2.95 billion that the state received, that was, according to Congress, was to go to local governments, with the state keeping 55% of that amount. But at least it's more than what we had before. So I know you've shared that you would like to see a portion of this going, but of course you're one vote of 3. So at least there's a resource now, additional resources now that we can work with. And also Josh mentioned that the governor mandated that, so he initially put out 297 million to the local governments that had fewer than 500,000 population. And then the second round that he just put out was 126 million to the local governments, and they could spend how they wanted to, but also 62 million he has distributed to the local government's public health departments. So presumably there will be additional funding that will go directly to the county's public health district. There will maybe be a couple $100,000 in addition to this 1.15 million going to the county.
This is only good news, as you know. We've been waiting, and the other big issue, of course, is as per Commerce, and I still haven't seen them redefined. It is supposed to be all committed by the 31st of October, and I keep thinking, and then I thought maybe the 15th of November. At least I heard that. I'm not sure, but still, it doesn't leave a lot of time to actually allocate the money and get it to the people that need it. So.
Josh did just let us know this morning before he had to jump off that the state has extended the date for all the coronavirus relief funds to November 30th.
Wonderful.
They gave us another month.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So a little bit more time to distribute it. I know the EDC has a contract with the county to distribute grants, and that was through the lifeboat program. Blackball is not an applicant with the lifeboat program. They have too many employees, and we have now distributed half of those funds through small grants, $10,000 and lower, to it'll be to 69 different businesses. So we've distributed so far 58,000, and we've submitted all that paperwork to the county. So we should meet our deadlines. But today, you know, we're focusing on how do we help Blackball, and how do we, I think, Ryan, wouldn't you say one of the goals is to get you back up and running as soon as the border opens? And that's a challenge because in those first months, you'd be presumably losing money, right? A lot of money, potentially.
Yeah, I think you've said it exactly right. Let's just imagine that the border opens at the beginning of next year. Those are the months that we traditionally are losing money anyway. If we don't return to previous volumes, it's going to be very difficult for us because we'll be burning, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And we really need a good, season of next year when we are profitable and, all in theory, of course, and traffic returns to get us to the following year. So this is a very long range problem that we're looking at. It's not, kind of an immediate issue of, oh, can Blackball start up tomorrow? We could. It's more of looking at the long-term health of the company and viability and return to, previous service levels. And I just wanted to add something to a comment that was made. There were a lot of programs that came out of CARES, and people have asked us a number of times, like, for instance, why didn't we get ferry money? Those programs just simply weren't designed for Blackball. We're kind of an odd duck. We're the last U.S. private ferry. We're in international service. Sorry, I got a phone ringing. We're a private company. We're in international service. We don't fall under any of the other categories. And so it just doesn't, we haven't found the right hole there, round peg, square hole. We just haven't found it in any of these programs. And that's what we're working on with Tim and others, is to try and find those answers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ryan. So the port also has a lobbyist, Bruce Beckett, and the North Olympic Legislative Alliance, which is a consortium of private and public entities in Clallam and Jefferson counties, has hired Josh Weiss. And I would love to hear, Josh had to jump off. They are very well connected at the state level. And I'd love to hear from Bruce on, your perspective with the state and the port.
Well, is Tim still on the line?
Yes.
I don't know. Okay, good. Good morning, Tim. Just another part of how the port would like to help in this situation is by deploying my Washington, D.C. partner, Ray Buhager, and myself in any of the efforts that Tim and Blackball emerge with. The really good news about what Tim reported this morning with respect to the National Defense Authorization Act is the ports and my partner in DC has been deeply involved with that with Congressman DeFazio and Senator Merkley. So Tim, don't hesitate to take, to ask for our help at any time during this effort. It's that important to the port, and it's that important to the North Olympic Peninsula. And then of course, if there's a state element, outgoing chair, unfortunately, of the Finance Committee, Gail Tarleton, called me about this the other day. And we've been deferring to the work that Tim and Blackball are doing. But Tim, if you need some assistance or want a great partnership to work on this, just give us a holler.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that.
So there were some great questions here in the chat. First, from Luke. Luke, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just wondering if there was, any conversation with the folks, Ryan or others, in Victoria, if a border opening happens in the off season, to try to plan for that in terms of some special offers and incentives to get people to travel back and forth.
Ryan Burrows, do you want to answer that? Or
Well,
do you want me to?
I think for us, I don't believe we'd have any special offers other than maybe working with our packages. But I think with the hotels, they've been very challenged over here through the summer season. They have not had great occupancy. Their numbers for their people and keeping whole. So depending on where the vaccine is when we do open, whether their capacity for their rooms, I don't know if they could really do too many deals, but that's kind of my opinion. Time will tell. They might have to, but I don't know how much they can really discount when they've been so challenged. I think it's kind of a bit like the airlines. So time will tell how many come out of it, because right now they've had a very poor summer numbers in Victoria. So in our case, you know, we have our staff, and depending on what's going on, the amount of travel we'll have, I don't know if us discounting is a real push, you know, at $19 a passenger, but we might look at it. Yeah.
I would just add that Tourism Victoria, or Destination Greater Victoria, has been really supportive. They really want us to reopen, as does Butchart Gardens and all those hotels. The hotels are running at about 20% occupancy, and they've laid off most of their staff in Victoria. It has not been like other areas in more rural settings. Victoria has been hit very, very hard. And so at the provincial level, they're looking at ways to support tourism entities. Whether we get any support as a US company is probably at best debatable, but unlikely, I would say. But nonetheless, there are entities working on it.
Thanks, Ryan. So Ryan Burles, has the British Columbian provincial government shared whether they will give notice or any kind of indication as to what the time frame will be when they do decide that they'll open up, like some kind of heads up? We will give you at least 2 months notice, and is that really tied to a vaccine? What kind of information have you received from that perspective?
I haven't heard any timeline like notice. I would assume they would do their very best to give people an idea. What they have said though is that the 14-day quarantine, which is now mandatory federally, but the province initiated it earlier than the feds did. And they have said that unless there's a vaccine, herd immunity, or a drug that takes the death rate down, they won't be changing that 14-day quarantine. So far, the federal government has been very respectful to the provincial health authorities and what their requirements are. So we feel that until there's a vaccine and that 60% herd immunity vaccine, people have taken it somewhere in there, then maybe they'll start to open up the border. But they haven't really said, you know, that for sure either. But they basically are saying that until we feel it's safe, then we'll start talking. Time will tell, I think.
Thank you. So I noted a comment from Kevin Galashi with Clallam Transit, where he said the CARES Act funding allocated to our community, Clallam Transit, was awarded just under 4.5 million. That's amazing. That's was that directed from CARES Act, or was that something that the governor allocated? Kevin?
Actually, that was from the CARES Act funding from the Federal Transit Administration. So it goes through WSDOT and then it gets distributed from there to the transit system. So it's specific to transit. So basically that'll keep us hopefully afloat through 2021, most of 2021, depending on how our sales tax comes in. And what that does is help keep us running at full service and support the 100 employees we have. I know it doesn't help Ryan out much, but you know, at least it's keeping transit afloat here. Is you know, we're certainly support the coho and want to help where we can, but this money here is specific to transit systems.
Okay. Kevin, as you know, we love the transit system. We love that straight shot too. We want to see you do well with it.
Yeah, for sure. Us too.
So Ryan Mullane, how many total employees do you have in the height of the season, and how many have been laid off, and you know, where are you right now with that?
We get up over 120 in the peak of the season, including everybody. We've laid off pretty much everyone except for those who are taking care of the ship. You know, we're going out once a month. We'll continue to do that to make sure the ship continues to be in operational condition. But everyone, including ourselves at management, are either laid off or have gone to reduced salaries that are remaining, and it's only a handful of people.
Okay. And you shared that monthly you're losing money and you are looking at different loan options, but it's critical that if there's no subsidy from a government entity, if none of these CARES Act funds are allocated to Blackball operations, then you've really got to focus on the long view of keeping the company viable. And that means keeping your monthly losses to a minimum, which certainly means you can't open up earlier than at a point earlier than what you normally would be if you were only focused on, you know, ensuring that you're minimizing your cash loss. Is that a fair?
I may defer to Ryan Burles too on this one, but I think you've said if that's fair. I think we're going to be very mindful of, you know, our cash burn and that long-term health, and really looking at, you know, when it makes sense for us to be operating, and you know, that's the big picture.
So
I just want to add that, you know, our ship is 60 years old, and you all know it's impeccable, and we want to keep it that way. So Ryan mentioned we're taking her out to run her, but one of the things going forward is her sitting there and making sure she's ready to go. That does cost money, and we want to make sure that she stays ready to go. So every month we're not running and we have to keep her going. It's a balancing act there, but we need to make sure we keep her impeccable, and that costs money. So whether when we come back in, going to dry dock, making sure she's up to snuff, that's a real concern, because we don't have her, we don't have Blackball. So.
Mm-hmm. So will you be putting her in dry dock again this January?
Well, we haven't made that decision, but it certainly doesn't look that way. We're going to wait till we know when the border will open, and hopefully then go to dry dock. To what extent we go, realistically, it doesn't look like it'll be a full dry dock, but we do want to make sure that she's up to speed. So whether we take a good look at her, get her up on the blocks, that's probably what we'll do, but we haven't made that determination. But yeah, what we spend at dry dock is a big number, and we definitely aren't going to go for the 16, 17 day dry dock, I don't think.
Okay. So Kaj Ahlburg, you had a few comments. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. I want to say on behalf of Port Angeles Business Association, I mean, we agree, I think, with all the other business organizations on the peninsula that your continued existence and profitability is probably the major economic issue brought up by the COVID-19 crisis. And we all want to do whatever we can to help. First question, or suggestion rather, is to the extent that soon it may be helpful for you to get letters of support from local business organizations, let us know as soon as possible, at least in broad outlines. Many of us have processes. They're not very complicated or lengthy, but you know, they have to go to the board or some committee. So the sooner we know what's required, the more likely we're able to act on a day or 2 days notice if we are required to do so at a certain point in time. Question is, I remember that the various attempts to bring scheduled air service back, there were discussions of somehow local government and the port providing some guaranteed minimal level of passengers for the local airline. I'm wondering if under the same legal framework, it is also possible for local governments to do something similar with you, so that when you reopen, there is some commercial contracts, not grants, basically transporting, providing services to local government that might help with cash flow. And finally, related to that, whether you've considered the idea of pre-selling tickets before you have a specified opening date, just for people who want to take a trip on the Blackball in 21 or 22, but so you get the cash flow now.
Meeting I was listening to. Okay, much.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll start with number two. I probably have to defer to the port to understand. I can say that one of our early requests was to be treated somewhat like the airlines have been treated. But of course, we don't operate under the FAA, and we're not, again, we're an international service and don't fit into a lot of the programs. I'll defer to John on that question, or Karen. The third one, yes, we've considered selling tickets, but it's actually it's actually been a little bit more complicated because people want to buy for a specific time, and we can't guarantee that we're going to be sailing at those times. And it's actually in the early months caused us a little bit more headache because we lost money on credit card fees instead of actually increasing because people wanted their refunds. So it wasn't as beneficial as we thought it would be. I think we can certainly look at open-ended tickets for the future and that kind of thing, but it turned out to be a little less helpful than we had anticipated.
So Karen or John, do you want to speak to the port transportation issue?
Sure, I'll jump in here for a second, then I'll defer to Karen as well. I really like the idea of a minimum revenue guarantee. Unfortunately, the way the law is currently structured, we can do it for airlines only. There's some very specific laws that allow for us to do that. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't work with our legal counsel and maybe try and find a workaround. So best I can say, I love the idea, Kai. I think that's something we definitely need to be looking at. And you know, the port will do whatever we can. And if that means we have to utilize our lobbyists to try and get some legislation passed to allow us to do that, we certainly will. The port's in the unfortunate situation. We can only do what the law allows us to do. We can't go do things unless it's specifically prescribed by law that it's something we can do under RCW 53. So this one, that would currently fall outside of that, but doesn't mean we wouldn't be willing to make a run at changing it.
If the port in principle were willing and able to do that, is that something that through NOLA or otherwise, if it's an RCW issue, we should be bringing up with our local legislatures if the legislature is ever back in session to address COVID-19 related issues to get the appropriate legislation passed?
That's very possible.
Thank you.
Bruce, can you speak to that?
Sorry about that, I was muted. I'd have to try to dig deeper into that. It's a guaranteed revenue is what you're asking about as to complying with the port laws?
Yeah, the issue we run into is it very quickly becomes a gift of public funds. And
yeah.
So trying to find a way that it qualifies as not a gift of public funds. There's some precedent been set for doing it for airlines because they're able to demonstrate that, you know, the port as the operator of the facility can actually make some money back when we support the airlines. Now, stepping outside of that box to do it for an organization that we don't really have any part of, but just doing it as a community benefit is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we can certainly take a look at it.
Yeah, it seems to me like this is something that hopefully could be dealt with administratively or through the business practices as opposed to going to the legislature to resolve. You know, there's all sorts of port agreements around the state with their various tenants. And so, you know, let's look at that deeper because it'd be nice if it could be solved without having to go to the legislature.
Karen Goshen, is there anything you wanted to add?
Just that when we were working with the airlines, there were quite a few complications and rules. And I know in one of the other rural areas, they worked, the port worked strongly with the chamber, and certain things flow through the chamber instead of the port because it couldn't technically flow through the port. So there's just a lot of complicated rules about it.
Well, we can certainly explore that. Thanks. So let's see, does anybody else have anything they wanted? So Debby Fuson has a question.
I was wondering, we're talking about public money to private money. What if we did something like Save Our Coho and did a massive community fundraiser? I mean, that would all be private money that could be donated. I mean, we have what, 75,000 people in our community, and if everybody threw in $20, that adds up. And see if we could do something like that so that we're not dipping into the public-private well. I don't know, it's just, I'm trying to get around that as well, with the public and private. But I think there, if we really get it out there, even if people just throw in $5, it would add up to maybe something that might, at least help. There's Loop in Victoria residents as well. That's right. I totally forgot about that. We could do something on the other side of the water as well. Make it an international fundraiser.
Yeah, I think that's the EDC certainly would be very supportive of a program like that, a GoFundMe kind of campaign. And I think it's important for the federal and state government to see that this is really critical. And it's not just critical to Port Angeles, which it is. I mean, they're probably the most impacted of all the different areas, then maybe Victoria. But this is a Clallam County and even a Jefferson County and Grays Harbor issue. I've been so impressed by business owners that say, a lot of restaurateurs in Sequim, as an example, say that the biggest issue that they see that needs to be addressed is Blackball Ferry. Not their own business, not their own restaurant, but Blackball Ferry, because it impacts so many people and businesses across the North Olympic Peninsula. And
perhaps the last idea could be combined with mine. I would see it might be something similar to what the ice skating rink did. I mean, as support to get it off the ground months before it started, they were selling packages of $100 that included maybe $50 or $60 worth of tickets, not reservations for any particular day or time, as and when room was available. And lots of people, individuals and businesses purchased these to make sure that the ice skating ring would take place. So I wouldn't see it selling a ticket for March 29th, 2021, but rather that maybe you have a $50 package which includes a ticket on the Coho, but it's basically an unrestricted $50 just to provide cash flow so that it is available for the reopening and to carry Blackball through those first months when they're probably cash flow negative. In addition to any public help it might be able to get, but this would be private funds and therefore would be unrestricted, wouldn't have to be paid back, wouldn't have any strings.
So basically a ticket bank. And we were working on a potential ticket bank for an airline, a commuter airline, if they came to Port Angeles as a resource. So I see it's 9 o'clock. Ron or Ryan or anybody, Randy, would you like to give some last parting thoughts? I just know we don't, go ahead.
I want to thank everybody. And, we'll take some of these ideas certainly and talk about them. I think, we just feel overwhelmingly supported and we really do appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll just say that the tribe cares a lot about this for the same reasons everybody already articulated. So we'll do whatever we can to help out with the cause. There are some solutions out there. We just have to keep working together to help Blackball stay afloat and get back up and running. We need this market.
And running sooner than later. And, as soon as the border opens, I think that would be the ideal that I don't see. I guess one question is, do you see potentially that it'd be viable to start Blackball back up before the border would open?
Why?
Is the question like running for essential services? Is that what you're asking?
Uh-huh.
We looked at it very closely. We looked at it in March. We lost a lot of money in March doing that. We would have days where we'd have just one car coming back, and we had one passenger at one point. It's not something that's really viable. We do take a lot of commercial traffic, but we kind of need the rest of the car deck full to make money. So no, we definitely have to look at it as when the border reopens for non-essential. And as Ryan Burrows mentioned, that 14-day quarantine. And the last thing I'll just say on that is that the tourism entities are talking dates like April now out of BC. And so, they're, again, taking a longer view, and we need to be aware and I guess respectful of that.
So does it make sense that we're looking at either April 2021 if there's some subsidies and the border's open, or April 2022 if there's no subsidies and the border had opened a year earlier, but you can't afford to sail unless you've got some subsidies? Is that a good guess of a recap of the situation?
Ryan Burrows, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't think that subsidies is necessarily, like, we're looking at Main Street. We don't like the terms, and it isn't really the answer, but we definitely are hoping that, whether DeFazio or another facility for loaning to get a better credit. But no, we don't want to wait till we think the numbers are there. We want to build, and when the border opens, we open. We want our people to work. We want to create the commerce for both sides. And, we kind of believe that when the border or the quarantine, it will move it forward. And, but we know that it could be that the numbers are poor, and if we don't have a nest egg, we'll be in trouble, and we don't want to lose the company. But
yeah.
But at this time, the unknown is the piece that you can't, this April, as Ryan mentioned it, tourism people here are saying April, but nothing says April is the magic date. It might be February, but it could be after. And if we get too pushed back into next summer, that's going to be not good. So that's kind of the one thing we're looking at, is that the worst case scenario. And realistically, we might start in the early year, but if we get pushed back into July and it's a slow July, here we go. We've lost a lot of the months that make us money again, and then we're in big trouble. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we will meet here next Wednesday. It'll be a different link, and we'll send out something through our newsletter so that you can set up a link for each Wednesday if you'd like. All right, thanks so much, everybody, and look forward to working with you on this issue. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim.